start sharing my presentation with you guys. There we go. All right. So as Rose mentioned, my name is Kellie Kahtani, and I have been in Butte Silver Bow since 2017 as the MSU Extension Agent. Prior to that, I was a high school agriculture teacher. I did that for about 15 years before moving into the extension realm and working mostly with our 4-H program. I also have some family consumer sciences duties within my extension role. And one of my passions is goats. I have been raising goats, gosh, about 40 years now. So a little while, and things have changed a lot in that time frame. So I've been a member of the American Dairy Goat Association, and that's where some of the information for tonight came from. Since about 1989, when I started my 4-H program in the state of Washington, Snohomish County. And for the most part of my goat raising, I have had Oberhausley and Toggenburgs. I currently have Toggenburgs. And we have, between my brother and my parents and I and their major farm, we have raised every breed with the exception of Nigerian dwarfs. And we have not had the golden Guernseys yet. I served as a licensed judge with the American Dairy Goat Association from 2016 to 2018. That was about the time that I was transitioning into my role within extension, and judging just didn't work out with the busyness of the schedule of the summer as a 4-H agent. But I've also judged a lot of youth shows, do a lot of youth presentations with dairy goats, and some clinics down here towards Southwest Montana. And I've done a little bit in Eastern Montana as well. And I have been doing those types of things since I graduated from high school way back in the 1990s. So it's about 25 or so years that I've served as a judge for youth programs within the 4-H. And then this is just a picture at the bottom here with my little Toggenburg babies. Those were from a couple of years ago, and one of those little doelings actually lives here in the state of Montana, down in Dillon now. So the other one is currently in Wisconsin with my mom and dad and their farm. So I wanted to kind of just start off with a little bit of information about the breeds of dairy goats. There are 9 recognized breeds through the American Dairy Goat Association. And I did borrow these pictures from local and regional farms with their permission. So just kind of starting off, they are in alphabetical order. The first one on here is the American Alpine. Alpines can come in about 8 recognized colors through the American Dairy Goat Association. They are one of the largest breeds. They're also considered first in average milk production, averaging about 2,700 pounds of milk in a lactation. But they are 5th or tied for 5th when it comes to butter fat. So just kind of looking at some different uses for our Alpines. They're a very hardy, sturdy breed, very beautiful, very alert, very intelligent breed. In the middle, La Manchas. La Manchas can come in any color. La Manchas are some of the sweetest, more docile of the dairy breeds, actually. And they're the most recognized because of their ear shape. They can have 2 different forms of ears. They can have either an elf ear or a gopher ear. The elf ear is almost level with the head. And then the gopher ear or the elf ear comes out just a little bit at the very top. And so that's the most recognizable trait within those La Manchas. They rank 4th in milk production and 3rd in milk fat, with about 3rd for milk protein as well. So good milkers, very docile breed, great personalities. Next picture over is going to be our Nigerian dwarf. These guys are by far the smallest of the breeds. They can range from about 17 to 22.5 inches at the withers when it comes to the registered does, and they can be up to 23.5 inches at the withers for bucks. They do actually get measured before they go into the show ring. And they are the only breed that has that kind of a strict restriction on them. They can come in any of the colors, and then they are ranked 8th in milk production. Part of that is just due to their overall small stature, but in relation to the size of the animal and the amount of milk that they can produce, they are very decent dairy animals. They actually have the highest milk fat on average of any of the breeds. So very quality milk dough, even though they are smaller in stature. Next, we have our Nubians, and these guys are recognizable by their noses and their ears. They have the really long, beautiful, pendulous ears. Nubians is actually where I started when it came to breeding. And I started off in 1989 with a single Nubian doe. Her name was Lucky Star, and she was black with brown Doberman markings. This particular doe is a currently breeding doe over in Washington. Our Nubians are ranked number 6 in average production, but second in butterfat. So again, very high quality milk production. They can come in any color, but that nose and that ear feature are definitely part of their breed standards and what they are the most recognized for. Oberhasli is in the middle. Again, this is a breed that's near and dear to my heart. This was the second breed that we owned, and pretty much the main breed that started us into the American Dairy Goat Association and really focusing on those open shows away from just the 4-H shows. Oberhaslis are a little smaller in stature, minimum height of about 28 inches. Very recognizable by their unique color pattern. They are called a chamois, or a dark bay color with black markings on their face, their dorsal stripe, their belly, and their legs. Or they can come in solid black. Solid black bucks are not registerable, but solid black does are. But the preferred color is the chamois color with the black markings. Oberhasli ranks 7th in overall milk production and 3rd in milk fat. So again, smaller in stature, but very high quality milk. On the far right is our Saanen. These guys are solid white in color. It's the only color they're allowed to be, as they're recognized as a Saanen breed. They're again a very large breed. They're up there at the same stature size as the Alpines, around 30 to 32 inches at the withers. So very large, very, very docile breed. Heavy milkers, they're ranked number 2 in overall milk production, but 5th in milk fat. So similar to dairy cows, the more milk production, the less milk fat or milk proteins that are found within the milk, but very high quality dairy does. Again, a very hardy, sturdy doe, as well, being one of those larger breeds. Sables, they're a newer breed. Sables have been around for a long time, but they've been recognized since around 2000 by the American Dairy Goat Association. They originated as a Saanen with a color gene within them and were originally registered as recorded grades until they became their own breed back in the early 2000s. They can come in lots of different color patterns. They're just not allowed to be white or cream in color, but they can be mostly white with spots and different colors throughout them. Personality-wise, they're the same as the Saanen does, where they are very, very docile. They're very large does, very sturdy, hardy does as well. In the middle, another breed that's very near and dear to my heart, and this is actually my doe here in the middle. And this is the Toggenburg. They can be this lighter brown to a darker brown, sometimes black in color with the white markings on the face, the ears, and their legs. They are smaller again. They rank 5th in milk production, and they are 5th in milk fat production. They do tend to have a little bit of attitude to them, as you can tell by the look on her face, but very special does in my heart. And then the last doe here, this is a Golden Guernsey, and they are newer to the American Dairy Goat Association, just starting to be shown. They've been on exhibition at the national show for the last couple of years. hoping to get enough animals to be able to make them or allow them to have a show. They are recognizable by their long hair. They're the only ones that are not shaved prior to going into the show ring. And that really long, beautiful hair on them is going to be one of their breed traits. They are a little bit smaller in size, similar to like the Toggenburgs and the La Manchas. Sorry, guys. And I really don't know anything about their personality yet. I have actually not seen this particular breed in person, but I'm excited to maybe go to some shows this summer and learn a little bit more about that Golden Guernsey breed. When it comes to overall selection, dairy goats are one of the few species that have what we call a unified scorecard. And some of you guys that maybe don't show open class or even really youth shows are kind of maybe wondering, why does this matter? The really cool thing about the unified scorecard is that it gives you kind of a baseline for that ideal goat. General appearance, dairy strength, body capacity, and mammary system. All extremely important, even when we're just breeding for our own purposes at home and trying to figure out where we're going with our own breeding programs. When we look at these four pieces of the unified scorecard, what we're looking for is we're looking for quality animals that are going to be able to move correctly, digest their food properly, utilize that feed, as well as produce milk. And that's where all four of these categories really kind of combine. While we may not nitpick those point values of those individual pieces, it's really important to look for the overall quality, no matter what you're breeding. And that's true for any species, is we always want to make sure that what we're putting into the breeding system is high quality animals, so that they can have that freedom to move around and that ability to be able to produce milk and last a long time, which is where all four of these categories really kind of combine together to make that ideal goat. So what I'm going to do now is kind of look into each one of those categories and kind of what they mean and why they're important. All right, and we will start with our general appearance. So, and I mentioned that scorecard, basically it gives us a 100-point scorecard or rubric to kind of judge animals on. Of that, in a senior doe or a milking doe, this is worth 35 points or 35% of that scorecard. And what we're looking at is that overall eye appeal. We want to make sure that the top of the withers is higher than the top of the hips. They want to have that downhill angle to that body, a very angular body. Their necks and heads should be very prominent. You should have those feminine characteristics with your does, and very masculine characteristics about the head with your bucks. This also includes things like making sure that they meet those breed standards that we just talked about. Do they meet the right heights? Do they have the correct markings and coloration, the correct ears, the correct noses? We also look at specifically the feet and legs on an animal in general appearance, that overall strength of bone and build of bone within our animals, making sure that they can move around correctly, and that they're basically graceful as they move around. They are dairy animals. They're supposed to be very graceful as they move. So a lot different than how your boar goats move. Lots of style and grace. This is usually the first thing that a judge notices in the show ring, is that general appearance. It's that eye-catching appeal. And I use this a lot when I'm judging both youth and open shows. Dairy strength. This is words that have changed a little bit over the last couple of years. It used to be called dairy character. And what we're looking at is that overall ability for the herd to be able to produce milk and that femininity about her. And so we're looking for, is in this doe pictured, just really exemplifies this dairy strength of that long, lean neck. When you get your hands on them, you're feeling into the ribs. Those ribs should be flat. So how I tell kids is, if you hold your fingers out, the ribs should feel like the top of your hand, not the curvature of the inside of your finger. And that just kind of gives you a baseline. You should also be able to put your fingers between those ribs, depending on the size of your fingers, just to kind of give her a lot of rib cage. And what that does is it kind of opens up those internal organs, gives her the ability to be able to breathe properly. Her organs are not squished, and gives her the ability to really have that maintenance aspect, not taking up too much energy. A lot of times when I'm judging, I kind of grab a handful of skin and pull on the skin just a little bit. And what I'm looking for is that that doe has room for growth. So that loose, pliable, stretchy skin, so that she can continue to eat and to continue to grow babies and continue to grow as she needs to as she matures. And then kind of lastly, when I look at the back leg, this doe has a beautiful shape to her back leg. And we're really looking for that incurving of the thigh to give her that really feminine dairy look to her. Sometimes, and it's very different than when you look at the side profile of a boar doe. Boar does tend to have more rounded muscle systems, where our dairy does are a little bit sleeker and leaner than what we're looking at within our breeding does for boar goats. Body capacity. Body capacity is worth about 10 points on our senior doe scorecard. And what we're really looking for in body capacity, when I'm judging, is I stick my hand like this into the rib or into the chest floor and just kind of see how wide that chest floor is. On a mature doe, I should be able to spread my fingers and really be able to put some space there between the front legs as my doe walks. I also look at that overall point of elbow. So this little point here, where you can see her elbow stick out at the back of her front leg, right there against the body wall. The barrel of the doe, or the rib cage of that doe, should be below that point of elbow. And that's what we're looking at for that overall depth. And then she should get deeper as you get towards that mammary system. So wider barrel, which is that stomach area, and increasing in size as you look at her from the side profile, from the point of elbow down to that flank. And what this does is it allows that doe to really open up that body, carry her organs the way that they need to, ease of digestion, ease of being able to breathe, the ease of the heart being able to pump, just for that overall maintenance of her body. If she's really pinched or narrow in those locations, or really shallow bodied, she really just can't hold those organs in the right spot to make it beneficial for her, and being able to process her food the way that she needs to, and be able to do all of her maintenance of breathing and moving and digestion and everything, as well as having space to grow those babies and be able to hold them. And then finally, the mammary system, which is going to rank up there with the general appearance, and really looking at that solid attachment of mammary system. You can see a really great rear view picture here of our Nubian doe. We want to see a wide attachment across that base, right there in the escutcheon area, which is that little U shape at the top of her udder. You want to make sure that the udder floor and the top of the teats is above the hocks. And what that does is it helps prevent injury as she's moving around in the field or in pens. Correct placement of the teats, correct size of the teats. We want also, when you look at her from a rear view, you want to see the attachments of that upper udder to come down and extend into the thigh. And that just kind of helps keep that mammary system up and secured into the body wall, so that there is less chance of infection and injury. When you look at it from a side profile, you want a smooth blending forudder attachment into that body wall. And when you look at her also from that side profile, the ideal is to be able to see 1/3 of the udder in front of the leg, 1/3 should be covered by the leg, and then 1/3 of the mammary system behind the leg, just as a general overall view. And you want it to have a nice shape to it, just so that it's pleasing to look at. And then usually those does that have those well-attached mammary systems, for the most part, are also going to be good producing milk. And so that's kind of what we're looking at, is as long as that mammary system is strongly attached, then she will be able to produce a lot of milk throughout her entire life. And so, like I said, just kind of that scorecard just really emphasizes that movement, as well as aiding in their daily maintenance jobs, and utilization of food, as well as milk production, which is going to give you the overall quality dairy dough that we're hoping for. When it comes to bucks, we judge on a fairly similar scorecard. That general appearance is a much higher point value, similar to what it is when we're judging our junior does or our non-milking does, just because we don't have that memory system to look at. But in bucks, we also evaluate scrotums and testicles and making sure that they have evenness of both sides, that scrotum is held up tight as well, because that tends to be a trait that he can pass on, and it showcases some of that when it comes to the memory systems that buck produces as well in his offspring. And so we want to make sure that we have quality bucks as well as quality does. And anything that we don't feel is of strong breeding character, in all honesty, is best for castration, and to sell as a wether instead of as a breeding buck. And that's always a really difficult conversation to have, especially with younger 4-H members, of this probably isn't an animal that you would want to be breeding, so it's okay that you weathered him. And continue, you can show wethers even in the youth programs as pets. I always ask, kind of why. What is your point of having this particular wether? And just kind of get that storyline from the kids when they go into show those pet classes. But still really fun, and it's really nice to see when kids understand that breeding process and what they're really looking for and why they're looking for those improvements and why that animal might have been weathered in the first place. All right. So now we're on to a little bit more of the meat of our program, which was something that Rose asked me about, which was general nutrition when it comes to our goats. And so kind of our 3 basic pieces of nutrition is hay selection, grain selection, and being able to serve minerals. We prefer loose minerals, free choice loose minerals. And there are some out there that are goat specific, which is a great option. So we'll start off with hay. Depending on where you're at, hay quality can vary a lot. And so that hay quality and that hay selection will also lead into your grain selection. And so the selection of the highest quality feed is really important in milk production. If possible, alfalfa or alfalfa grass hay is the ideal feed. Goats really need that extra protein and those extra nutrients that are available through hay in order to supplement into their diet. They are browsers, like, instead of grazers. They're not going to be sitting out there eating a lot of grass, but they do love to browse. And that hay really helps keep that rumen going as a ruminant animal. You want to make sure that your hay, some people go in and actually have their hay tested with their extension agents, and find the data analysis when it comes to like their protein value within their hay. And so kind of knowing that will help you with grain selection as well. When we're graining, and graining specific for milk production, 14 to 18% protein within that grain is really important. It's a dairy ration. It's very different than what you're putting into your market goats, just because there's going to be some different feeds and different supplements within that grain selection as well. So kind of look for something that is a dairy ration, not an all breed. It's going to be a more complete feed if it's specific for dairy goats. And it goes hand in hand with that hay selection. If you have lower quality hay to where it doesn't have a good protein value, then you want to make sure that you're supplementing that protein within your grain. And so if you're feeding mostly like a grass hay, then an 18% grain would be your better option. But if you have a really high quality alfalfa, before we moved over to Montana, I lived in the Yakima Valley in Washington. We were blessed to be able to have 4 and 5 cuttings of our alfalfa hay. And so we had very high quality hay that was available. It's very different than where I'm at here in Butte. And so that makes a big difference in our grain selection. Minerals, so we do a free choice mineral. That's actually a picture of what we use at home. And what we do is the free choice on one side, or free choice loose minerals, that is purchased. And then on the other side is actually baking soda. And goats will eat what's available to them. And they'll eat it as they need it. Their body tells them, when they're lacking something. And so they'll go in and do the loose minerals or eat on the baking soda a little bit. Biggest thing is to keep those dry, and away from wind, and moisture, in order for the goats to get the best access to them. Just because of where we live, we also do a copper bolus with our goats, because you can tell when they're copper deficient. And so we did a copper bolus every single year with our goats, and that in our goats, the most common mineral deficiency is going to be copper. Copper, selenium, zinc are very common in the state of Montana for deficiencies. Overall, just kind of some feeding information to kind of go with what we were just talking about as far as general nutrition. If your doe is considered what we call good condition, so she has average fleshing, you can feel the ribs, but you can't see the ribs, is kind of what how it's been described to me as far as what they consider good condition. And they have access to high quality hay. Then the recommendation is to feed 1 pound of grain per 2.5 to 3 pounds of milk produced. If your does tend to get a little bit heavier on that, then you can decrease their grain a little bit and kind of see how their body reacts to it. If they cannot maintain that healthy weight when they're milking, and that they're putting just everything that they have into the milk bucket, which for some does they just do that, then increasing that feed per that amount of grain is recommended just to keep them in that good condition. For our bucks, we only grain when it's breeding season. Most of the time when they just kind of act like pasture pets. They're out there, they're browsing, they're grazing a little bit, kind of eating a little bit of hay. As long as they're maintaining that good condition, and again, that's feeling the ribs but not seeing the ribs, then you really don't need to grain them. And it's sometimes healthier for them because they can build up minerals in their body, and they can have like urinary calculi, and actually have some trouble with peeing. And so it's really important to kind of monitor that. And so that's why we only supplement them during breeding season. They are a lot more active. We're moving them around, they're breeding, those type of things. So we really just kind of give them a little bit of supplement during that phase. And if you're keeping wethers around and they're just kind of hanging out, and really don't have a lot of purpose to them, they don't need more than a little bit of grass hay. They don't need grain at all. They don't really utilize it very well within their bodies. And then they can also have those health problems of the urinary calculi. So it's really important to not grain, especially your dairy wethers. Okay. When it comes to your hay, and again, just kind of that overall high quality piece, your hay should be dirt and mold free. Any kind of moldy hay is going to cause some digestive issues and illness, and could cost a lot of money in vet bills. So make sure that you're checking your hay, smell your hay, smell your grain. Same thing, especially if you buy in bulk, like in the picture previous, here. This is one of those big totes. It's about 1,500 pounds to 2,000 pounds worth of grain. If you're ordering your grain like this, or even if you buy more than one bag at a time at the feed store, it's really important to keep that grain in rodent-proof containers. And that way they don't get droppings, and it's also less likely to get moisture into that grain as well to cause it to mold. So high quality, rodent-free, mold-free, dirt-free kind of feeds for our goats to keep them as healthy as possible. Okay. Keeping their feed off the ground is also really important. They will spread some onto the ground. They can be very wasteful, especially if their hay tends to be a little stemmy, and they're picky does like mine. They can be a little wasteful, and so sometimes you go through and kind of pick it up and put it back into the feeder. We do that all the time, especially during the show season, as we're at fairs. and they just get wasteful and bored, and so they just start pulling mouthfuls of hay out, and we'll just stuff it back into the feeders. But other than that, if you notice that it's wet, that it's been trampled on, that it's been has feces or anything like that on it, it's really important to not keep that out there for feed for them. Uh, there's lots of different types of hay as well. So if you have access to things like pea hay or anything, um, then they'll eat it. Just make sure that it's that clean. Pea hay is really hard on with dirt. But we had great access to that when we lived in Western Washington. So just kind of depends on where you're at and what you have available to you. Okay. All right. Another piece that Rose kind of asked me a little bit more about was just overall milking success. It's really important to have a schedule. And this is one of the hardest things when it comes to running dairy animals of any kind. This is dairy cattle or dairy goats. Ideally, goats should be milked twice a day in 12-hour increments. So growing up, we would get up at 5:30 in the morning. We go out, we would milk, then we get up, or then we go in, get everything cleaned up, and get ready for the school day. And then when my parents got off work as close to 5 as possible, and my brother and I got home from like sports practices and all that kind of stuff, we were right back out there as close to 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, and milking, just to keep those does on that schedule. If you have the availability, similar to dairy cattle, if you milk them 3 times a day in 8-hour increments, you're going to have a little bit higher milk production on average. But ideally, it's twice a day in 12-minute or 12-hour increments. And what that does is giving them a schedule really helps them so that they don't have an overextended udder. Overextended udders can cause leakage. They can start spraying milk out of the orifice at the bottom of their teats. When the orifice is open, it also welcomes bacteria in, and so can cause some problems with mastitis or other infections within the udder. If they're overextended, so people aren't keeping them on a regular schedule. This happens during like when we're showing and we have to udder our does up. They can start to reabsorb that milk as well, so they're not as productive. If it's a regular thing where they're not being milked in those regular increments, their milk production can drop significantly because they're only going to produce what is being taken out of their body, similar to when they're if you leave babies on them. And then it's also really hard for the does to move. So if their udders are overextended, they get very hard. And you can see them sometimes it shows, and they really start to have issues with moving around that mammary system with their back legs. So for the comfort of the doe, it's really important to get that 12-hour increments. When milking, cleanliness is of the utmost importance for milk quality. When we're bringing milk in to the house, we hand milk. We wash with an antibacterial wash, an iodine-based wash of the mammary system, hand milk into that stainless steel bucket, and then immediately take that milk into the house so we have a runner. If we're feeding babies, we do actually have a milk machine. This is actually one of our does on just a standard milk machine. It's collapsible milk stanchion, and then the machine is right behind her, and then it milks into a large plastic container, and then we use that milk to feed babies or to feed pigs. But making sure that the clean area in your milk stanchions is really important. It helps prevent illness in us as well as illness within your goats. Washing that mammary system is also very important. Whether you're hand milking or whether you are machine milking, you want to make sure that your hands are clean. You want to make sure that the mammary system is clean and free of any kind of bacteria or manure or anything like that. So washing with soap and warm water or an antibacterial wash is extremely important. We also we use a teat spray right now. We're in the process of kind of switching over to a a teat dip. Sorry about that. When we're done milking, and what that does is it kind of protects that orifice, that opening at the bottom of the teat, and prevents any kind of bacteria from going up into the udder. When the does are done milking, they're going to do one of maybe three things. They're going to immediately go out and they're going to stand in front of the hay feeder. They're going to immediately go out and get in to the water, or they're going to go lay down. And so we want to just make sure that that orifice is clean and is protected before she has the opportunity to go lay down, and prevent any kind of bacteria from getting into the mammary system. Like I said, whenever we take milk into the house, or if we're milking even at the fair, we utilize a stainless steel bucket. And what that does, you can sanitize them much easier than you can do with plastic, but it also prevents any kind of off flavors from being transferred from the container into the milk. And so stainless steel is the ideal when it comes to your milk buckets. And then lastly, I guess I went a little bit faster than I thought I was, just our value added products. And this was something just to kind of showcase some of the things that we can do with our goat milk. We started off with our goats and kind of in that early 90s time frame, and really started focusing on milk and making soap. And so my mom would take it to like farmers markets and bazaars and craft shows and that kind of stuff. And so this is actually local stuff here. This is out of, I think all of these pictures are coming out of Livingston with Lorelei Halleck. But the soap there, we also made shampoo. There's great people making goat milk lotions now, very soothing to the skin. And then there's also those value added products of food, which is cheese, butter, selling the milk itself. This is beautiful caramel sauce. So lots of different things that you can make and sell, or utilize in your own homes, depending on where you're at with any kind of licensing. But we also had opportunities to use it on our farm. And we used it to raise calves and to raise our pigs. My brother and I showed market pigs when we were in 4-H and FFA. And so we would take all of our excess milk and be able to feed it to pigs and raise them on show chow as well as whole milk. And even now as a 4-H extension agent, if I have 4-H members that have pigs that are maybe not quite gaining the way that they need to in order to make weight for fair, it's a great protein source for them without adding a lot of fat. And so I always recommend for them to find either a dairy or somebody that has goats and see if they can get some milk from them and feed that to their pigs, just to give them that high quality milk product in order to kind of help them gain a little bit more. Some people raise bum lambs. We also raised all of our baby goats on it, of course. And in the height of our days, we were milking about 50 to 55 goats twice a day, every single day. And they milk for about usually 205 to 305 days in a year, depending on what your schedule is and kind of what your need is. And so just lots of different options with them. Just to kind of give some credit to those people that helped me out, I reached out to a couple of friends in order to get some of these beautiful pictures. The Oberhausley, Sable, and La Mancha pictures did come from Tweeter Farms. That's my home farm. They're now based out of Rib Lake, Wisconsin, originally out of, I think they were in Selah, Washington last. My Enchanted Acres Nubians, Kim Puzio, out of Snohomish, Washington, with her beautiful Nubians, and that's these guys right here in this picture. Coyote Kids, which is Lorelei Halleck out of Livingston, Montana, and her beautiful Nigerians, and also her Sonins and those beautiful pictures of the value-added products. And then finally, Soldier Mountain, which is Tracy Stampke out of Central Idaho, and her absolutely stunning alpines. Just a few resources, and this PowerPoint will be sent out to everybody that registered as well. So you'll have access to these, but these are just some of the pieces that I utilize for some of those nutritional pieces. So we borrowed from some Penn State, University of Missouri, Alabama A&M, as well as Mississippi State and Oregon State, and just kind of making sure that we had some information that's available. But these are great publications that are available by searching them as well. And then just a thank you. And then here is my contact information if anybody wants to reach out here in the future. I, like Rose said, I'm located here in Butte Silverbow. I do judge youth shows all over the state of Montana, and do some youth programming as well, with different 4-H groups around the state. And so feel free to reach out and ask any questions as well. With that, I will go ahead and stop sharing and open it up to our questions.
Thank you, Kelly. We actually have some questions in the chat. So
Perfect.
MK says, I thought the elbows are called the hocks in livestock.
So the hocks are the back legs. And so when you look at her at the does, the more solid piece on the back leg is the hock. The point of elbow is on that front leg right as it connects into the body wall. But that's a great question, and one that I have asked many a times in the showmanship ring for our youth showmen.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Christine says, we have seen a lot of zinc deficiency lately. Worse
Mm-hmm.
when pregnant. Is it hereditary or more so in the diet?
I think that one's more so in the diet. And that's where sometimes we have to do some testing in order to find those out, and work with our veterinarians in order to help alleviate some of those deficiencies. They can kind of sneak up on us a little bit, and not everything is as apparent as sometimes our copper deficiencies are within our goats. They actually get very distinctive uh, very distinctive visual pieces that tell us that they're copper deficient. So we'll see like fishtailing at the end of the tail, and they'll get bald spots on the end of the tail. With our Oberhausley, because they're that really dark, deep bay color, they tend to turn a little bit lighter in color when they're lower in copper as well. But zinc is definitely one to work with your vet in, because it's not going to be everywhere within the state.
Delcy says, how do you find hay with lignin content under 40 in Montana? It is so frustrating to buy second cutting alfalfa and they eat the leaves and literally waste 80% because they won't eat the stems because they are too stemmy.
Hmm?
So many let the hay grow to get more pounds per acre, but then the goats don't eat that.
Goats are very picky. We had to force them in order to eat the stems. That's why I said we did actually go out and put those stems right back into their feeders. And then sometimes didn't give them as much, maybe like lessened the amount of fresh hay that we gave them in that feeding, to force them to eat those stems. The other thing is, and I know Montana is really tough, and especially different areas of Montana, in order to find that really high quality hay. If you can and you can afford to bring it in from out of state, sometimes that dairy quality hay it's going to be a little spendier, but you'll have less waste if you can buy it from out of state.
Thank you.
And if you find a good producer, stick with them and order it well in advance.
It's good for any species.
Right.
Charity asks, what is the best mineral?
It really depends on what you have available in your area. So each feed store is a little bit different. I would say honestly, if a couple of our people, just so that I'm not endorsing specific brands, but if that are willing to share what they use and have had good luck with, I would feel much more comfortable with that. But also just kind of know what you have as far as deficiencies in your area. Like I said, selenium tends to be a high deficiency, as well as copper, especially in the state of Montana. So make sure that you have the right selenium to phosphorus ratio in your feeds. And then just look for one that your goats will eat, because that's another good one. Is they do tend to like the loose minerals better. But just make sure that it's one that they'll eat and not waste. Because if they won't touch it, it's not doing them any good. I do see in the chat that somebody said that they tried Purina and their goats would not eat it. Vetiferm Concept Aids seem to work where they're at. So Yeah, just kind of figure out with your feed store what's available, and then what your goats will actually utilize.
Thank you. Coy asked, can meat breed wethers handle more grain to put on more weight than dairy wethers?
So they're going to put weight on very differently between the two species. Um, and so, yes, so like if you're raising market wethers, they do have a lot higher of a concentrate um, feed instead of as much hay as what we feed our dairy animals. They also, if you got to remember that they also tend to have a little bit shorter of a lifespan, just because they're going to be butchered around that 100 to 125 pound weights, versus raising a 200 pound dairy wether. And so they do have a very different diet and very different growing phases for dairy goats versus your market meat goats.
Coy also asks, what can he give his goats to help with hair and skin?
So that's where the minerals come in. You can also, I mean, this is not necessarily always the best time of year, but give them baths, and utilize a really good soap with conditioner in it, a livestock soap with conditioner in it, and that will help. You can also give them a little bit of Shoshin, which is just a spray or a dry shampoo type spray, to help condition that hay or that sorry that skin and that hair in between baths. Um, we used a lot of um gosh, a lot of different brands, but bathed them a lot during show season, and just making sure that you get them dry, get them clean, get all that soap off of them. And then you can also put sunscreen on your goats, especially when you're getting ready to go into the show. And after you've clipped them, if you have lighter skinned or lighter haired goats, they do have a tendency to sunburn. And so don't be afraid to give them uh, some sunscreen to protect their skin, similar to like you would do with pigs.
Osvaldo asked about who can he reach out in California UFC extension. I just put in the chat, Charlia, who's also on this, sent me a link, a website for those for you to go to. So if you just look at what I typed in, then you should be able to find an extension agent down there. But if you need more help, then email me and I can help you out too.
Uh,
Del,
I
oh,
also know quite a few breeders down in different parts of California, and judges and stuff, and so I can help with getting people in the right direction as well.
and I will put Kelly's email on the link and the evaluation. It'll probably be Monday by the time I get that out, but then you can email her and ask her for those goat breeders. Thank you, Kelly. That's awesome.
Yep.
Delcy just asked, do milk machines add a lot more work with the cleanup process of the machine itself? She hand milks and sometimes wonders about milk machine, but doesn't have a sink in the goat barn. Is it just personal preference of minding about the extra cleanup of the machine?
So cleanliness of the machine is extremely important. If and machine care in general, maintenance. If there's problems with the inflations or anything like that, it can cause damage to the memory system, causing things like mastitis and injury and bacteria into the udder. So that cleaning process is extremely important. We clean after every milking, so with a bleach solution, and then just make sure that we rinse it out so that there isn't any bleach left over and residue in that milk container as well. We have it, like I said, a very large plastic one. It's a heavy, food grade plastic that we have with our milk machine. But if we're bringing it inside for use in the house, then we do hand milk into those stainless steel buckets. We didn't even buy a milk machine until we were milking about 40 goats. And it was just to help. What we would do is I would milk one, my brother would milk one, and my mom would man the milk machine, and it would just make milking a lot smoother and easier and faster for us as a whole. We could actually milk as fast by hand as we could by machine, and then but it saved some carpal tunnel issues that we're dealing with now, about 25 years later. So yeah.
I laughed because I milked a heifer the other day, and I was like, ugh. To even get like a pint was like that would have taken me all day. So I'm like, I'm flabbergasted, Kelly. You're
I will
amazing.
tell you that when we were in high school, one of the big things at fair, like I said, I grew up in Snohomish County, so the Evergreen State Fair was our big fair at the end of the season, and there was always a hand milking contest with the dairy kids, and they hated it when we came in and beat them because we hand milked on a regular basis, and they were so used to machines, and we could hand milk a cow faster than they could get a quarter done.
I need to have you come up during calving season. Um, Coy asks, do cheap milking machines, can you find them online? Is that your question, Coy? I guess, do the online ones that you find, are they cheap and are they good? Do they work?
Make sure you buy from a reputable seller. Uh, just because that way you can also make sure that there's parts available if you have struggles. We have to replace inflations on a regular basis, and making sure that those inflations will work with machines that we have is really important. The pulsators, the quality of the pulsator is probably one of your more important pieces of that milk machine as well. So definitely do your research and check out those reviews. Reach out to some of the local breeders around and kind of see what milk machines they use and what they've had success with, and they will be very vocal about those brands that they have not had success with. Is what my recommendation would be, more than just looking at price. Get onto a couple of the different social media groups. They're always asking questions about different breeds, or sorry, different brands, and there's definitely some great feedback to follow up on from those people that have tried and either loved or absolutely despise certain brands.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep.
Suzanne asked if there's a proper way to administer copper bolus.
Um, yes. So we drenched, kind of used the pill popper and actually shoved it down their throats, and then just kind of massaged their throat in order to get it down. Some people have opened them and been able to administer them that way, but it's better to be able to put the whole capsule in. But remember that the goat ones are going to be smaller than what you would use for dairy cattle or beef cattle, and so make sure it's those smaller ones so that they don't choke.
Okay. Tiffany says that she has a 4-year-old doe who has been in milk for almost 2 years. She's
Mhm.
still producing well, so she continues to milk her. Are there any long-term consequences to milking her for that long?
Just the overall there she's gonna start slumping off in some milk production. Um, and then just so that I mean, if you need, give her a break at some point. I probably wouldn't milk her, more than a 2-year span, just to give her that time for her whole body to replenish. It's nice for them to have that little break or vacation, which is why they recommend that 205 to 305 days. If you're on DHIA milk record testing, it's usually a 305-day lactation. And so just giving them that 60 days off, that 2 months off for their bodies to recuperate prior to having kids again can be really important for those does. And so just dry her off gradually when you're ready to, and rebreed.
Thank you. Susan asked, do you know of anything different between, is there anything different between organic versus inorganic minerals?
Oh gosh. Um, that's a good question. I'm gonna have to look that one up. I've never really paid attention to the organic aspect of feeds. We feed conventional, not organic. And so I haven't really checked into the inorganics or to the organic brands that are available.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is
Sorry
it.
about that. That's a
Um,
great question, though. I've never been asked that one before.
that is a good question. I think availability would be one of them if they're available where you're at.
Yeah, and there's not much available in organics in general in the state of Montana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ferris asked, do you consider the triangles base to judge the dairy goats?
Um, I need a little more to that question. Is
Uh,
is she looking at like the triangle shape um of the goat? Is that what was that what they're asking?
Ferris, if you can clarify that in the chat, then we can get back down to you. That'd be awesome. We'll move on. Delcy, a follow-up on the hay question. Is it true that goats, because of their 11-hour digestive turnover as compared to the cow that digests takes 16 to 17 hours, that they usually can't digest the hay that has high lignin content? And that's why they don't eat hay that is more stemmy. Their bodies just can't digest it enough to get nutrients out of it. I was trying to understand my goats and the hay waste they come across this info and came across this information.
Honestly, that is another phenomenal question that I have honestly never been asked before. And I would check with a nutritionist within your feed company. We have quite a few of them throughout the whole state that do feed analysis. I honestly am lucky enough to not have to do any kind of feed analysis in my office. Working just with my most of my 4-H kids are market kids, not breeding project kids. And I don't have any well, I have a few cattle producers, but they um, work with their feed reps in order to do that milk or to do that hay analysis as well, and figure out that overall balanced diet. So that's something that I've honestly never been asked before.
One thing too that has been brought, like with more on the cattle based part of it that I can talk to is that there's a lot of like alfalfa, like the Roundup Ready alfalfa. Some cattle don't like that because it's really stemmy. So it really depends on what variety of alfalfa is out there as well. So you can ask the alfalfa breeder or the farmer rancher, whoever's putting it up for you, like what kind of variety is as well. And then you could specifically ask, if it's more, if there's more leaves on it as opposed to not. And then with haying, it depends also if that hay is too dry and you bale it, a lot of those leaves will fall off and they won't be baled up as well. So you'll get some stemmy stuff. So you can always ask them to, give an example of what it looks like. And if it's a pure alfalfa bale, you can kind of see that when you unroll it. And when you buy a whole bale, that's kind of a commitment as well. It can be $100 to $150 as well. But it kind of depends on when they bale it, at what stage that hay is dry, and then the variety of that hay too. So that might help a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, oops, this question just got bumped. Sorry. Delcy also asked, where's the best place to learn how to trim or shave your goats for showing?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, if you want to contact me directly, I can put something together for you. I honestly, we did everything for our own goats. My parents did not help with that at all. And I have helped at nationals with grooming. And so it's one of the favorites that I have actually, and some fond memories in my 4-H and FFA careers. And so if you want to contact me directly, I can give you those resources. I just don't have them right here on my computer.
Um, okay, and then I email. Here I am scrolling. Crystal asked, this is a cool question. What moisturizer is best for udder health? I have a doe who gets very chapped looking under during the summer.
um, Anything that you can buy at your feed store. We use Bag Balm a lot of times, both with my grandparents owned a cow dairy. And so we'd see a lot of chapped udders there as well, as with our goats. We also, when we were going into the show ring, would and shave with a 40 blade, as well as a Bic razor. And so razor burn tended to happen sometimes. So a Bag Balm or I'm trying to think. Oh my gosh, I just lost the name of it. It's in a white bottle and it's got cow prints on it, Holstein prints.
Mhm.
And it's udder something. I just can't think of the rest of the name of it. But we use
I can
that
see
directly
it.
onto the udder too. What was it, Rose?
I can see it too.
Right?
Like when you go to the
Yeah,
checkout, it's always there.
it's always right there. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's a white bottle with Holstein prints on it.
Good marketing.
And we use that or bag balm in order to help moisturize.
Okay. Suzanne asked, milking machines, pulsing. Many say they are pulse, but just have suction. What damage does just such do? Does the
So what the
pulsing do?
So what the pulse does is inside the inflation, the pulse will go through and actually move like your fingers would in the milking process, and they squeeze those teats to be able to bring the milk all the way down. And then the suction helps bring that milk with each squeeze. So the squeezing or the pulsation piece is actually a really important piece. Um, and one of those pieces that you have to really pay attention to within that inflation to make sure that it is pulsing and working.
I think that the Holstein one, I think I looked it up. I think it's called Utterly Smooth Udder Cream.
There you go. Is it? I can
Um,
just picture the bottle looking like a
yeah,
Holstein.
I had to look it up. And you can get it on Amazon or your local store.
Yeah.
Charlia said lots of Montana producers will do a mixture of grass alfalfa.
Hmm.
Suzanne says, do you shave all dairy goats for show, even 4-H? This is our first year showing in 4-H.
Yes. So technically it is a full body shave. Um, Preferably a 10 blade. Sometimes a 5 blade depending on what you have. That gives it just a little bit longer. And then there's a little foo-foo on the end of the tail, and everything else is shaved with that 5 or 10 blade. And then just making sure also one of the really important things for judges is the cleanliness of that animal and making sure that the hooves are spotless, and that includes in between their toes, as well as under the tail and inside their noses and their ears, and making sure that their eyes are free of boogers. And so those are the big pieces that I look for when I'm judging, is that the goats are shaved properly, their hooves are trimmed, and they have those cleanliness markers. As well as making sure that also when you go to this is more of a personal preference when I go in. If they haven't just been sprayed with Shoshin, is best too, because I have to touch everybody's animals in the show ring. And there's a lot of times that I ask the superintendent to either supply baby wipes, or I will bring a package of baby wipes, and sometimes have to wash my hands in between every single goat as I go through, because of the greasy feeling on them. But again, with 4-H kids, reach out to me and I will do what I can in order to help with that, because as that's kind of where my passion lies. And I get to judge a couple of fairs this year and do a couple of presentations with some of our goat programs throughout the south part of the state, and teach kids how to judge and how to select their goats as well.
That's awesome. Thank you for that.
The highlights of my job.
It's a fun part of it, definitely. Shilia said grass alfalfa mix works fairly well with goats. And if you're in Montana, we do have a forage specialist. His name is Hayes Goosey. So if you have questions about forages, like getting high quality alfalfa for your dairy goats, you can reach out to him. And Shilia also says there's a lot of dairy quality hay produced in the Bozeman and Townsend areas. Hayes Goosey, etc. Oh, Ferris typed back. He says dairy goats normally have triangles in different parts of their body, like neck have a wider base. The thigh is having a wider base from the backside and then going to the inner down. So that's kind of
Oh, okay. So more of that angulation, so when I'm judging, I look just for kind of that overall angulation in general. So if I'm looking from the withers to the hips, it should be that triangle base. That's the big triangle piece that I look for, is more that wedge shape to the body. Dairy doe should not be super chunky through the shoulders, but fairly sleek and well put together with ease of movement, and then become wider as you go towards the rear of them. So their hips should be much wider than their shoulders. That's really the main triangle piece that I look for when I'm judging. I do look for that overall smoothness of blending within the neck, that long, lean dairy neck. And then when I look at them from a side view, yeah, you do want that, like the front of the leg a little bit thinner. Then you would see the musculation of the rear part of the leg when you're judging. I just have never heard it referred to as the triangles. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Suzanne says, let's talk about dewormer. Many have talked about dewormers versus fecal samples. What's
Mhm.
your idea on deworming?
Deworming is going to be an integral part of just maintenance in general. So if you can keep your goats on a schedule, deworming is important as far as using it as a preventative. Versus if you notice a problem within your goats, that's when you need to get that fecal exam and work with your veterinarian in order to get cleared up what you might have, and they'll help you with dosages on that as well, and recommendations as far as brands to use for that treatment piece. But the dewormer should be used as a preventative as well.
And we also, last week we had Dr. Rosie with UC Davis. She spoke about goat health. So if you want to email me your email, and then I can send you that recorded link as well too. She had a lot of her presentation was on deworming worms and stuff like that too. So, but
That's great.
it's like what Kelly says too is, you know, be progressive, and when there's a problem, don't wait for the problem to come to you.
Right.
And oh, Suzanne was wondering if you would want to spend time giving a clinic in Bighorn County.
I can definitely travel over to Bighorn. Just yeah, shoot me an email, and we'll figure out a time and stuff, and I can work with Andrea over there. Andrea and I work really well together, and can put together something for Bighorn County very easily.
Wonderful. Coy asked, have you ever done AI in dairy goats?
I have. Not hugely successful for me, but I do know quite a few people that are extremely successful. And it's been a while since I've had to do any AI because we keep bucks, and so we do a lot of natural breeding. Um, but AI can be a great tool, especially with lack of resources around the state of Montana as far as quality bucks sometimes, and just getting them here, and especially if you have multiple breeds, sometimes it is easier to be able to AI.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Um, Callie is asking, do you have any recommendations on any possible pneumonia vaccines? I have heard mixed reviews as to if the beef vaccine works in goats.
That would definitely be one that I would refer to your veterinarian. We've never had to utilize a pneumonia vaccine with ours before. And so definitely having that client and vet relationship is extremely important when you're working to put together that preventative piece of your overall goat health.
And now with any antibiotics that you give to livestock, you have to have pretty much a prescription from your veterinarian. So it's a really good idea to have a very good relationship with a veterinarian in your area. Suzanne is asking about show dates in Montana. Are you talking about 4-H jackpot shows or whatever? And then any shows. There,
um, if Christy Nutt is still on here, or Heidi Brandt, I think I saw both of their names. If they want to throw in the dates of the Bitterroot show, that one's going to be an open show, and it's in June usually. There's sometimes one over in Big Timber, that's in like the next week after the Bitterroot one. And then for youth, there's the open one up at the Billings Fair, and then there's also usually an open class at Great Falls. With that's a really good show, and there's some great people that host that. Those are the only ones that I can think of right off the top of my head, other than I did see on social media. Oh, look, okay, Callie put in the weekend of June 8th is the Bitterroot show. Then there's also going to be a jackpot type show over in Billings that I saw on social media. And I think, I don't remember, I think it was the end of June, like around the 22nd, because it's my 4-H camp weekend, so I couldn't go. So I know that that one is going to be dairy goat specific as well. Thank you for sharing that date as well, Christy. June 8th, over in Hamilton, is going to be the Bitterroot Dairy Goat Association.
There's also a lot of there's a lot, like on social media on Facebook, there's a couple groups and they kind of track all of those jackpots and stuff on there. So I can't remember the name of it, but they're really good.
Yeah, there's a couple of different ones. There's also there's a District 7 dairy goats with the American Dairy Goat Association, and that's going to cover Washington, Idaho, Oregon, and Montana, and I think North Dakota. And they post a lot of their show dates as well, because there's a lot depending on where you're at. There's also a couple down into Wyoming, so it really depends on how far you want to travel to. And some great ones.
Corey is asking, is AI something he can easily do himself, or should he contact a veterinarian?
There's definitely some great webinars that are available to help you kind of work through it. It's the most important piece of that is being able to recognize when your doe is in standing heat. So when to actually AI to have the best reception rate or conception rate. So there's some great resources that are available. It really depends on your vet and how comfortable they are with AI and how comfortable they are with goats. But there are some AI technicians through some of the semen companies that are great resources as well if you want to AI. But it's all about figuring out that timing piece and then making sure that you thaw the straws correctly and insert them correctly in order to get that high conception rate.
Christine says she'll be doing a mini show as well as the ADGA show. Facebook ADGA District 7 post show information.
There we go.
So
and those are all for registered does, either through the American Dairy Goat Association or the American Goat Society, AGS. They take both registrations for most of those shows.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all of the questions for tonight. I want to thank everybody for coming on, and thank you, Kellie, so much for putting this presentation together and speaking. I've learned so much about goats since October. They're like mini cows, and they seem way easier to keep than a cow. So I'm like, let's see, we could change over the ranch and run about 1,000 goats and call it a day. But my fencing might be different. So thank you all so much for coming in and joining these. These have been absolutely amazing. And Kellie, thank you so much. Like I said, I'll send out the recorded link for this, and I will also send out Kellie's presentation, how to get a hold of her if you have more questions for her that you didn't think about. And there'll be an evaluation. So Goat Montana is doing these webinars, and we'd like to do more of them. So one question on there is, what other stuff do you guys want to learn about? So please fill out the evaluation, and if you have any questions, shoot either Kellie and I an email. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending tonight.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Rose.
Yes, you guys are awesome.